Hello, Alex.
Hello, Emma. How are you today?
I'm good. I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm also doing well, dealing with a cough. So I will try not to project any coughs into anybody's ears. But if that happens, I'm very sorry. But other than that, I'm great. I'm good.
All right, beautiful. Do you feel like you want to dive straight into conversation today? Or do you want to do a little grounding? How are you feeling?
I would love for us and for anyone listening, if they are, to just take one breath. Just take
Mhm.
one breath with awareness of our feet and our seat, one or the other, and just take that one breath together. Okay.
Yeah, beautiful.
So on three, one, two, three. Hey there.
That felt good, actually.
Ah,
Thank
you're
you.
welcome. You're welcome. And now I will dive in and I will say, so I've had an interesting thing happen to me this week where I have discovered something about myself that I did not realize I was doing. So
Always fun.
I know. So I will start by saying it's about money. And I'm willing to be totally open about numbers and quite forthcoming about those kind of things. It doesn't bother me. So if it is at all triggering for you or anyone else, then well, no one else can say, but you can tell me to take mind. Um, but yeah, so money was, oh, did you hear that in my voice?
Yeah.
It's still strange for me to talk about money.
Mhm.
But money was like my entry point and my exit route from the sort of veil of the coaching world.
Mm.
And it really, which I think it is for so many people, maybe not the exit, I don't know how common that is, but the entry point, because the coaching world is so heavily based around money and teachings about money, um, emphasis around earnings, all these kinds of things that,
Mm.
and it creates a very glamorous, very alluring way of talking about money and about lifestyle.
Mhm. Yeah.
So at a point when I left my full-time job, hold on.
She's coughing, everyone, just so you don't have a blank silence here.
Thank you. Um, yeah, so when I left my full-time job, I'd left without a plan, without meaning to leave. In fact, there was a very strange situation where I got fired from my past job and then rehired, and then I left of my own accord. It was a whole toxic situation. But so I had no plan and no real like financial grounding, no idea what I was going to do, and entered the self-development realm out of desperation for myself in the hope that I could build something of my own. I'd been wanting to work for myself for a really long time. And one of the,
More coughing.
oh, sorry, it's one of those things where I don't feel ill at all, apart from the fact that I just cough every few minutes. Um, but yeah, so I'd been wanting to work for myself for a really long time, and my boss had used that against me. It was one of his parting comments to me that lodged in my mind was if you really wanted to work for yourself, you would have done it by now. And
Like it's that simple.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Like, oh yeah, if you wanted to write a book, you would have written one by now. Like, oh yeah, let me just show you my pages of half-finished notes or my title ideas or my desperation or my wish and all of my challenges that kind of couple together to create why I haven't written a book. Or I can
Mm,
just say, screw you.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, I so desperately wanted to work for myself and to create my own income. I joke with Jason, with my boyfriend now, that I am just thoroughly unemployable. I'm not sure I could go back to it because I wanted this so badly. And yeah, so I came out in that frame of mind, and in the sort of rebellion of leaving. I was like, okay, well, I've got to do something. I've got to do something big. I've got to make it to prove that this was the right thing to do. And so fell into the self-development realm, got coaching myself, loved it, went straight into a sort of very idealistic, very American style of coaching, very, everyone, it was a particular sort of pyramid as you get into like those. Everyone was learning from one particular person. It all trickled down. Everything was taught very similarly. And that was what I thought I wanted to do. And that was the style of coaching I thought was coaching.
Mhm.
And so that was my entry point. And I thought that to have a successful coaching business, to be a successful coach, was to make those 6-figure years, to become a 7-figure earner, like a 7-figure coach. Jesus. I'm shaking my head right now in disbelief, or in concern and sympathy for the version of me who was so sucked in at that point. Um, and yeah, and so I was doing all of the money mindset things, doing all of the teachings around how to widen your, overcome your limiting beliefs around money and get those high earnings coming in and all that kind of stuff.
Mm.
And was so upset that it wasn't working. So, so judgmental of myself for why I couldn't make it work. And, that maybe I wasn't doing it hard enough. Maybe I wasn't doing it long enough. Maybe, I needed to write out 10 affirmations instead of 5. Or maybe I needed to sit with my beliefs for 2 hours a day rather than 30 minutes.
Yeah, repeat I am rich 44 times instead of 11.
Exactly, exactly. Money loves me.
Oh, I don't want my laughter here to sound like judgmental about anyone who's in that place, because I too have been there. I just need to make that clear. Like, the laughter is at myself, not
Yeah.
at anyone who's going through this or believes in
Yeah.
it even. Like, yeah, sorry,
And
carry on.
yeah, there has to be a sense of humor about it, because otherwise there's either anger or there's sadness, or there's, I
Yes.
have to release the weight of
Mm.
that pain there. But yeah, it was, I did it a lot. And that was what I thought having a business was. I genuinely thought having a business was sitting down with my affirmations for however many hours a day of writing all of these letters to my future self, all these present tense, situational things, these
Mm.
visions. I thought that was what having a business was. And then go forward maybe a year or so, I realized that I that was all. I kind of noticed. So I'm just hearing scratching at the door. That's why I got distracted.
Mm.
But I kind of noticed that there was like a secret source, that like the successful coaches were the ones who spoke about money. And I was like, oh, like it was that pinprick in the veil that was like, oh, so like you get to a certain point and then you talk about money, and then you really reach a whole new stratosphere of earning, because you are playing off a real deep innate human trigger, like not even an individual person's triggers.
Yeah.
And that style of marketing copy maybe is a whole different conversation. But yeah, it's something really really innate. And I don't think any of us, no matter what our income in is, no matter what our history with money is, I don't think anyone is completely released from a trigger point around money.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I was like, oh my gosh, Like that's the secret. If there is a secret of making it as a coach, it is to talk about money. And I was like, that's bullshit. That's that's messed up. Like that's not why I got into coaching. That's not the hopes that I had for coaching. Because as well, you know, running alongside all of this idealistic views around business was a real love for the calls that I was having, was a real love for working with people, and for understanding people, for connecting with people. It was all fascinating to me. So I was like, oh, I love coaching. Hate coaching businesses. But yeah, so this was sort of this is the the groundwork for where I'm entering this conversation. So I kind of left it all behind at that point. I was like, money mindset stuff, bullshit. Don't want to engage with it anymore. Left it behind and didn't focus on money at all. I haven't thought about my relationship with money in a really long time. Like it just hasn't been within the conversation for me. Like on some of our calls, we've touched on it. We've touched on business and money and earning, and where I might be playing into previous patterns or not unhelpful patterns. But it's not been the focus, and it's not been something that I've questioned within myself. And then this week, because we're looking into moving house, we were assessing our finances, and I looked in my bank account and I had £4,000 worth of money that wasn't like to be used. It was just money that was there. And I have never ever, this is a huge amount of money for me, just as a prerequisite. £4,000 to me is huge, especially considering that I'm the type of person who, as soon as I have it, it's like historically just disappeared out the window. I get paid, I go out, I go shopping, or you know, something happens and that money disappears. And apparently what I have been doing over the last 2 years is secret squirreling my money away. I literally have been almost subconsciously tucking it into, because I've got my bank has one of those things where you can put money in little savings pockets and it doesn't show up in your bank balance. And in those little pockets, I have £4,000. And some of it, to be fair, is to be used for, there's about 1,500, say, that will be used for my tax bill. But that doesn't need to be paid until 2024. So I'm already going to accumulate, you know, money in between now and January 2024. So it just seems to have happened. Something seems to have taken care. Like there's a part of me which has been really subconsciously taking care of me over the last couple of years, and I had absolutely no idea. I think because I didn't see it in my main balance. I only saw it in, like, so we went to the Cotswolds a couple of weeks ago, and so a few months before, I opened a little savings pocket and I was like, Cotswolds, and just put a couple of hundred in there to use for meals or anything that looked nice or whatever. And so I used that then. But yeah, it's just been happening. And I find this crazy. When I discovered that there were thousands of pounds, I was like, this is mad. I had no idea. That's what I'm dealing with this week.
Wow. I love the story, and like thank you for laying the groundwork, and congratulations on the part of you that knows how to do this innately, knows how to save, knows how to look after yourself, knows how to resource yourself. It's so beautiful. And you know, it's interesting, isn't it? Because all of the action, all of the money mindset stuff, the stuff you were doing before, like that was meant to do this, right? That was designed to create what you now have, savings. And yeah, I've been thinking about stuff like this too, and a lot of my work with clients, we talk about money because it is such a um sticking point for every human, like you said. And I sometimes think that those kind of processes, they actually make you more stressed. They activate more of a stress response. They put you into this place of being grabby and graspy
Mm.
around money, and like it becomes the be all and end all of your life, of your day, of everything. It's like and we put so much on it of like, I will finally be okay if I
Yeah.
have this amount. And you said, I think everyone at different, no matter what you earn, feels this. And I totally agree. I've worked with people who are extremely, extremely wealthy, and how they feel about money is the same as people who are in thousands and thousands of pounds of debt. So it totally is not about the money. But when you're doing those practices to try and get money, you're actually just reaffirming your lack, like over and over
Yeah.
and over again, aren't you?
Yeah. All I used to see was money everywhere. Like when, thinking about um that like there would be practices about keeping certain things in your purse, or about
Mhm.
looking at receipts, or I can't remember everything now, but it was all, every single, like almost like every action in my day, whether it was getting a coffee or whether it was sitting down to do my work, was targeted around money. And
Yeah.
it was just exhausting. And I think, taking some time to think about it this week, what I really needed was to be able to not think about it. And
Mm.
that's what I've done over the last 2 years, is I've really not thought about it. I set
Mhm.
up a process. So at the like I set up like a thing, like, okay, when I get, because I get paid weekly from my part-time admin job, so when I get paid, that this amount goes into this pocket, that amount goes into this pocket, and so it was a very simple, like 2-second transactional thing where I'd put stuff in that account and that pocket, and then it was done, and this amount was my amount to spend that week. Or
Yeah.
I tried to get, well, I am a month ahead in my finances, so I like accumulate money to spend the next month and then put it into my account. And it creates this, I don't have to think about it. And I know that sounds so privileged. To a past version of myself, and to some people it it will sound impossible. But I haven't thought about it, and I've created this like real gentle buffer, like a gentle, almost like under sprung mattress for me just to sit on, um without having to be like, oh, but what am I going to earn, what am I going to do, well, like, and yeah, it's, I mean, it hasn't felt like anything. That's the thing, like that. The other advice is that money has to feel really good, that it has
Mm.
to feel like really enticing and sensual, um and again, that it's moving us into activation, rather than, like, this hasn't felt like anything, and that's been fine.
I think it's fascinating because it sounds to me like you're acting, behaving like a wealthy person. Actually, wealthy people are not doing money manifestation processes. They're not putting crystals in their purse. They're not, or they might be, but they're not doing it for the money, right?
Mm,
They're not doing those things. What they're doing are setting up systems to help them manage their money well, so
yeah,
that they don't have to think about it as much. And
yeah,
you actually shifted from acting like a poor person to
yeah,
acting like a person who's resourced. And I think there's so much to be said for actually getting ourselves, taking proper care of our finances, giving ourselves budgets, making sure that all our finances work. So interesting. I've been having conversation with a client about this very thing this week, and something that um I thought about recently was it seems to me like people want a thrilling, passionate fling with money. They want
Mm.
like this love affair
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
is very like um kind of like you're doing something you shouldn't be doing, right? Like they want this like
Highly
exciting, thrilling,
charged.
high drama, yeah, big charges. Like they want that with money, whereas actually what you really probably want with money is more like a marriage, right?
Yeah.
Like a steady, consistent, um, not always easy, needs work, needs focus, in needs planning so that you can just let things flow. Like
Mm.
it's not as exciting and it wouldn't be as marketable, right? Like
Yeah.
it wouldn't be as exciting for people, but that's what I'm building now with money. Like, let me build a
Mm.
marriage with you, money.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly. And that I think that's the thing. Like it's not sexy and it's not marketable and it's not like okay, I am putting this out there right now that this is not me talking about how to use your money or putting together any for if you ever hear me release any form of marketing course in the future, you can direct me back to this podcast and say, Alex, what the fuck were you thinking? Because it would be so out of integrity for me to to do that. So this is not money advice or any form of like, listen to me, I've got all the answers. But
Yeah.
yeah, you can't then say, look, here's this secret, because the secret is just like, let's sit down and have a really honest conversation. Like, and and to not and then to not even take that conversation really any further, to just let it be.
Mm, mm,
Whereas having a marketable business based around money requires you to be constantly thinking about it and to be constantly in like a back and forth.
mm,
And it didn't feel safe for me to concern myself with money at the time. And what I have unintentionally done, therefore, is build safety, because
mm,
it was distanced. And that has allowed me freedom within my own choices, like allow giving myself money. And I think earning a lot less as well.
mm,
I I was much more like, it started because I had to be on a budget. It started because I had to say that you are earning a maximum of £1,000 a month. So how are you going to do what you need to do with that money? And these pockets were just like, okay, I'll put £5 in this pocket. Um, and yeah, it's been really interesting to not, well, only interesting now to not be involved in that conversation with myself, to just let the subconscious take over.
yeah. Beautiful. I love that. Setting up systems that can support you for what you really want, which is to not have to think about it.
Yeah, yeah. Because why would you? I can't think of anything worse. I can't think of anything worse than running a business that requires me to talk about money constantly, to think about money constantly,
Yes.
to
It
be like embodied, like to be the embodiment of money to your customers, because that's what you're selling.
Yeah. This is so interesting for me because at the moment I'm working on a number of small projects that are going to be things that are for sale in the future in my business. And this these two words, money dynamics, have continually been showing up in my
Mm.
psyche. And um it I was wondering about like what is this? And as I've explored it more, um, what it feels like, and I don't know exactly what it will become yet, but it feels like a totally different take on like looking at your relationship with money,
Mm.
um, but also being able to unplug from the idea that when you have loads of money, all of your problems will be solved
Yeah.
because right, that's the reason that people get so drawn into those businesses that are making these big hyper money focused promises. It's not the money, right? It's like what you think the money will give you.
Mm,
And actually, like I think there's a level, there's like a particular level perhaps where maybe money can give you a certain sense of peace or well-being, but I think there's I think there's some undoing that can happen there of like how can you be at peace now, right? Because I've had a lot of conversations over the years with coaches about money, and
mm,
something that I have asked every single person is like, okay, but right now, like, are you okay?
yeah.
Like, are you okay right now? Because there's this intensity of fear, like, I'm not okay, I'm not okay, I'm not going to be okay unless I have this money. And it's like, but you are okay. You're
Yeah.
okay right now. The thing that's making you not okay is the fear, right? It's not actually the lack of money, it's the
Yeah.
fear about what the lack of money means. And
Mm,
so I, money is such a weird thing, right? Because for me, it feels like at the same time as being extremely material, it's really conceptual. And I think our brains have a really hard time like distinguishing what even is this thing, right?
mm,
Especially now that we're not really using cash as much. It's like just numbers on a screen, and like it's so strange for our minds to try and wrap our heads around. So um yeah, I just say this because I guess I'm wondering, like, is there a place where there could be something that a coach, me in this case, could sell that's about money, that's genuinely helpful and supportive for the
mm.
world? Or is it always going to have that tinge of, I'm buying this, even if I describe it in the way that I just did, is there always going to still be that tinge of, I'm buying this so I can have more because I need more to feel
Mm.
something? Um,
Oh, it's so interesting.
How
Um,
avoidable for me right now after having this
mhm.
conversation with you. Like, no matter how much I say, I mean, maybe I need to put at the top of it, right at the top, this is not going to make you more money. Like, or it might do, but it's not why you're buying it. Like, um,
Oh, see, I think that's where I got to and why I said it would be so out of integrity for me because and this is a completely personal choice through,
yeah,
the what I've navigated is that for me it's not like it can't ever be
yeah,
completely free of that and also the it feels to me like a self-circulating issue, like it rather than coaching is designed to help people or even spiritual mentorship or anything. These things are designed to allow the individual to make changes within their life, um, bolstered by the support or the guidance or the um, whatever it is of someone outside of their situation. And as soon as we bring in this element of, okay, but this might help you with money, there becomes like a specificity to it that I think takes on a different tone. I think there's like if thinking about yourself differently, thinking or a coaching relationship allows you to navigate your relationship with money differently, then I think that's, it, as you and I both know, it comes up naturally in conversations all the time. We can't pluck it out of a conversation, we can't pluck it out of people's lives. But when we start to say, this is something about money, where we are using that trigger, we are using that fear or the fact that we know that it's something that affects people. And we're what I mean by a self-circling problem is that it then just creates more of itself. We can't we can't promise that through that teaching we will remove someone from those fears. We can't promise that. So if we can't promise it, we can't risk it. That's my own sort of, I can't do that. I don't, it's almost like, can you change the system from within the system? I'm not sure that you can.
Yeah, I agree, and it's so interesting because I mean I need to this is such an early stage concept for me,
Yeah.
so it's hard to kind of see exactly what it is, but something I know that's really valuable, because it's been personally really valuable for me, is understanding more about the way that I think about money and where it came from. And and in terms of not just how we think about money in the world, not just like the fact that it is a survival thing, but like the impact of my parents' behaviors with money on my impressionable brain and the formation of my brain. And like for me, that then feels like less about money itself and more about like understanding who I am, why I'm the way I am, and my behaviors in relation to finance. So there's like a bit of nuance here for me of being like, okay, well maybe it's not called money dynamics, right? Because it's and this is where the dynamics come into play, right? It's more about the dynamics than it is about the money. But if people see the words money dynamics, the fixation is going to be on the word money, not on the word dynamics. So perhaps it's a language thing there.
Yeah. And I think that is a really key distinction though, because that is what creates this self-circling problem, is
mm,
that that there is the focus on money. Like the focus on money is put in there. And so I don't think it's a small distinction. I think it's a really important distinction, um, to remove that word. And that's
yeah,
not to say that, that we should take away the freedom of conversation around money. We're talking about it right now.
yeah.
So, there's, we don't want to remove the fact that it will come up. It always comes up.
Relation to selling, I guess, is where the distinction is. Like
Yeah.
those conversations are always going to happen. We're always going to have to deal with money, but let's not use someone's pain against them to
Yeah.
make more of it ourselves. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's where then um you have to get really honest with yourself as a business owner, because at that point you are saying, I'm going to earn less from this than I could. I could
Yeah.
call it, I could put the word money in there and I could make more from it. I will. Like, I genuinely think that it will make more money if you put money in the title. um
Yeah.
but as a business owner, we have to say, am I personally willing to do that? Is that my aim? And
Yeah.
for me personally, I just came to the conclusion that it couldn't be. And I had to be, and it's not always easy. It's not always easy to do that. Um, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I could say the same thing about my move away from the human design projector niche. Uh,
Right.
I I know that my business has made less money since moving away from the niche.
Right.
Maybe because it's less findable, maybe because people are looking specifically for that word, and it's a way that more people were, finding my work. But I think it's a similar thing. Like I had to, at that moment of feeling like this is dropping away, know there will be a drop in income following this decision.
Yeah.
And am I willing to be in integrity and make less money
Yeah.
than not be in integrity and make more? And like I know that for me integrity is so important. So it was a kind of a not even something I really had to properly think about. There was fear
Mm.
over it, but integrity's always been so important to me. But for someone who perhaps integrity is not such a high value, and that's fine, we all have different
Yeah.
core values, um, that might be a harder thing. So
Yeah.
it's really complex, isn't it?
Yeah. Or it might not even be a consideration. Like for some people who do have a different value system, they wouldn't even have the consideration that it would maybe not be 100% ethical, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And that's their road, and that's totally fine. That's, I struggle as someone who cares deeply about the ethics of my business, like to the point of struggle, as you know, to the point of real fixation, over fixation. And yeah, I have to navigate when I am creating problems for myself, and holding myself back out because of this fixation. And but yeah, as someone who knows that, um, I have to be aware that I care about it more.
Yeah.
Um, and that actually ethics in business means different things to different people. There is no rule about what an ethical business is. Because some people will only take it so far.
You have frozen for me slightly,
Some
Alex.
people will look at,
Oh,
oh,
you're back.
am I frozen? Am I back?
You're back
I'm
now.
back. I'm
Yeah.
back. Who knows where I got to, but yeah, it means different things to different people. And yeah, that I have to be aware of that, and then only look at what I choose to do.
Yeah. Beautiful. I love that. And there is nuance. I mean, this week on my Instagram stories, I have been talking about some stuff, and on one of the slides, someone said, we were talking about some stuff, and it ended up with us saying like, oh, we're finding the Instagram coaching culture like repulsive in a way. And I had someone send me a DM and say like, can you expand on this? Like, what do you mean by that? What's wrong with it? And I went back with some examples, and I said one of the things I said was like hyper focus on money, hyper focus on results, and big promises, and huge amounts of money and all that kind of thing. And and she came back and she said, yeah, but what's wrong with women making money? Like we've not made money for so long. Like what's really important to me is women making money. So it's
Yes.
like, if that's your value, like if that's something that's super important to you, then fine, like go for it. I'm
Yeah.
not saying I'm
Yeah.
right and you're wrong. Like,
No.
and this is where this money dynamics idea is coming in, because I'm like, you know, this person is the way that she is because of her life experiences up until now. The reason that value is higher for her and perhaps lower for me is because of all of these completely unique life experiences
Yeah.
bundled on top of one another, billions of moments
Yeah.
that brought us to this point. And so um, it's so cool for me to realize like there's no right and wrong in this, because I think that this conversation could come across like we're being sort of holier than thou, and we're being like
Mm,
this is right. And like I really don't want it to come across like that, because I may not be able to see why it's right for someone else, but I do believe that every person is doing what makes sense to them based on the life they've lived. So
yes.
it's not to judge those people who are running these businesses. I personally don't want to be involved with them and will never pay them anything and don't want them on my feeds. But also, like, if that's where you are, that's where you are. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And I think sometimes there can all be this sneaky undercurrent in a conversation like that says, um, you'll get there. Like
yeah,
you'll reach my point of view at some point. And I think this was one of the first podcasts we did, wasn't it, where we said like that's not the case. Like I can, the same is true about like I can only focus on what's right for me in my business. I can only focus on what's right for my journey. like
Yeah.
what's right in my journey. And there is no winning over anybody. I'm not in any sort of competition game, or I'm not trying to change anyone's mind. All
Mm.
I can focus on is what feels like the best route for me to take based on all of the things that I've watched. And some of them might be wrong. I have to notice within myself that some of the things that I've taken in, that I've learned from, are in direct contrast with something that someone else has taken in and learned from. And both of them will be from equally acceptable, rightful sources. There is no right path. I can only do what I feel is right to do.
Yeah, and I think this is a beautiful example of something that I know that we're both passionate about because of previous conversations, which is another part of the coaching industry, being like you pay for a coach, you hire a coach because they know more than you, they're more advanced than you, they have some kind of specialized knowledge that you don't have. And I think that guru culture is something that I really want to break down. Like I love being inspired by people. I love, seeing people who give me a different way of thinking or a perspective shift or impart some knowledge on me that they've learned and metabolized and brought out into a beautiful way that I can understand. Like I love that. But it's not, it becomes an issue for me if I then go, they're better than me. Like what they know is more important than what I know.
Yeah.
And I think it's really easy to do that. It's really easy to put people on pedestals and idolize them. And so, if anyone listening to this conversation is like, God, yeah, Emma and Alex know more about it, even if they feel like that about this, like, don't. Like, look at what brought you to where you are with your beliefs about money. Look at your unique values and like own it. Like, know that you are right and that no one can, yes, you can grow and learn, of course, always, but yeah, just I don't know. There's something in that
Yeah,
conversation.
absolutely. Absolutely. And this was one of my big holdups before we started this podcast, before we started having these conversations, wasn't it? Like,
Yeah.
about who are we? And like, who are we to talk about things? And it was like, I don't have any knowledge. I don't have any like wisdom to impart in something as huge as a podcast. And once we sort of took that off the table and we were just like, let's just record our conversations, then it was like, oh, that makes sense now, because everyone talks about stuff. Everyone sits down, talks about various different things all the time. And so yeah, that's what we're
Yeah.
doing.
Yeah. And that's it, it says it in the name. It's just our conversations shared with the world. The conversations we have having anyway behind closed doors, just published for the world.
Yes. Yeah. Well,
Um,
how about you? That was quite a long. I think we've still got time, haven't we, for to turn to something from you if you are willing.
well, I was going to talk about a subject that I think probably needs a longer space than we maybe have today. So maybe we'll do that for next week because I just so I'm not being cryptic, about a week ago in a private conversation, Alex asked me, what does spirituality mean to you? And at the time I said, I'll send you a voice note in the morning. It got to the next morning, I was like, how on earth did I think I was going to have an answer in 24 hours? I don't know. And over the week since then, that has been developing and shifting and growing because there's so much I could say about this subject. And um, I think we probably need a full episode, or at least half of a full episode.
Yeah,
So
I
maybe
would
we
say
will
so.
park that because I think our conversation today needed this space that
Mm,
it's taken, and I think that one will need its space as well.
yeah, for sure. I appreciate that. And I can't wait to have that full conversation. I think that's gonna be a good one. Is there anything else on your mind? Anything small?
Well, I will just say one thing about it, and not to get into the full topic, but just because I think it kind of sits nicely in what we've talked about today, is that one of the definitions that is making sense to me about what spirituality means to me is spirituality for me is beyond the duality of fear and desire. Um, and that for me, I mean, I could talk about that just for an hour, but I think it's helpful in this conversation, right? Because the money stuff is very much living in the world of fear and desire.
Yeah.
And here's where spirituality has, I think, become bastardized by you know
Yeah.
stuff, because spirituality is now being used in aid of being free from your fear, like escaping your fears and moving closer towards your desire. And for me, spirituality is not that. It's beyond that, and it's saying like all of this life, everything is God, universe, whatever you want to call it. And I heard a big fan of Michael Singer and his work, and I heard him say, people say they want to know God, but God is everything. God is disease, God is like starvation, God is hurricanes. Like, you really want to know God? Like, and so it's going to be I think a really cool conversation to think about, like, what's beyond fear and desire.
Yeah.
It's been an interesting question for me to ponder. So
Oh, that's so, oh yeah, that is a bigger conversation because it started, didn't it, from the question. I was having some internal fury around the creation of suffering for myself and whether or not we can truly be in ease. And as we were saying, I rejected the word ease because of how it has also been co-opted by the new age development. Um, but yeah, under that understanding of fear and desire, we have to have had suffering in order to be freed from suffering by spirituality. And so this question arose within me of like, but is that what it is? And as someone, I obviously know your journey and know you are much deeper within that learning than I am, or than I desire to be. So it was a natural thing for me to be like, well, what does it mean to you? Tell me, give me the alternative, give me the lusciousness of spirituality. And yeah, so I think that's a really interesting point. And in that case, is
Mm.
there, I mean, yeah, I guess everything that we've been talking today is about being outside of that conversation around fear and desire with money. It's about neither.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think when you can begin to see that you're trapped in this web of fear and desire on pretty much anything in life, like, there's an opportunity then to be like, all you can do from that is swing back and forth,
Yeah.
right? Like, life is transient, everything changes all the time. So if you get what you desire, you're sure as hell not going to keep it forever.
No.
So
Yeah.
if you're living within that, you are keeping yourself in the swing. There's something more. And I think the trouble is, our whole culture, our whole society, the reasons this is so hard is because everything in our culture um, exists within that framework of fear and desire. And we can't even imagine what's beyond it.
Mm,
We can't even imagine a life that exists outside of that. And so
yeah.
that's why it's so hard. Our brains are just like trapped in it. Um,
Yeah.
so and in the Buddhist tradition, like Buddha said, all suffering is as a result of desire. And it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, it keeps you trapped. So
Mm,
yeah, bigger conversation. Can't wait to have it.
nice. Yes. And especially considering it's going to shift and change and deepen as well over the next week or two before we have that conversation. So
Yeah, and my entire lifetime. So, yeah.
Yes, as always, no opinions are fixed. Everything is subject to change.
Yeah, who knows? 3 years you'll be running a money course. I'm joking. I'm joking.
You will. It's possible, you know. I say direct me back to this podcast and tell me what are you thinking, but who knows? I don't know. I
Who
never
knows?
know.
The freedom to change. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for bringing that subject. It felt like a really rich one, so I appreciate that.
Thank you. No, thank you for going there with me.
Yeah, beautiful.